Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I'm here to take a look at the Elspeth Planeswalker deck for Magic the Gathering from Theros Beyond Death. According to the back, this is Elspeth, Undaunted Hero. Elspeth is a renowned warrior of surpassing skill and unshakable willpower who has defeated everything from gods to death itself. Build up a battalion of devoted soldiers and lead them fearlessly to a glorious victory. You get a deck box, 60-card deck that you can play tabletop or online, and two 15-card booster packs, as well as a strategy insert and two reference cards. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's inside. This is Elspeth, Undying Hero, and for 2 white, you get a 5 loyalty Elspeth Planeswalker. For +2 loyalty, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. For -2, search your library and or graveyard for a card named Sunlit Hoplite and put it onto the battlefield. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. And for -8, until end of turn, creatures you control gain flying and get +X/+X, where X is your devotion to white. There's a deck box with some Elspeth art on it. Let's go ahead and look at what's inside. Inside you get your deck, and you get your 2 booster packs from Theros Beyond Death, and your strategy insert. There's some information here about Elspeth Undaunted Hero, and it's just a mono white deck, which is pretty rare for these Planeswalker decks, but there it is. There's not a lot of information about her, but just enough that you might get a little bit of an idea of who she is. I kind of wish that there was more, but that's where we're at right now. There's a little bit of information about how to play the deck. It's not enough to really know what you're doing, and so I think that it would be better if this were less vague and more like a deck tech where it tells you what to do and how each of the cards functions in the deck. But at least there's something here, and there's a little bit of information about the mechanics that you're going to find in the deck. On the back is a guide to how to use Planeswalkers, which is important because they're pretty complex and it's not really obvious looking at the card to know what it does. So that is helpful as well. Let's take a look at the deck. Elspeth's Devotee appears to be the exclusive rare for this deck. It's a 4-mana 3/3 human soldier, and it grabs Elspeth as soon as it enters the battlefield. So it's just a 3/3 that draws you Elspeth, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it also isn't all that special compared to a lot of the other ones. Eidolon of Inspiration appears to be Elspeth's unique uncommon, and it's a 3-mana 2/2 enchantment spirit. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target creature control gets +2/+0 until end of turn, so it's a nice way to punch through with extra damage. Sunlit Hoplite appears to be Elspeth's common, and you know that because the Elspeth Planeswalker card actually pulls these out of the deck for its -2, and it is a 2/1 for 2 mana human soldier as long as it's your turn. Sunlit Hoplite gets first strike, and it gets +1/+0 as long as you control an Elspeth Planeswalker, so it's a nice aggressive card. Here are the tip cards. You have a little bit about the phases, a little bit about how loyalty works, attacking and blocking, combat damage, and then your code that you can use to redeem this deck on MTG Arena. I've already done so, so this code is meaningless, but it's nice that these decks come with a deck that you can also play online in case you can't play it in person. So it's very much a good value in that sense. I'll be right back after I've played this deck against its partner in Ashiok, and I'll let you know what I think. So I've had a chance to play with this deck a bit, and I have some thoughts. The first thing is that this is definitely a very aggressive deck. As you can see, most of the mana curve is right here, and even these Daybreak Chimeras, if you can get enough other white permanents on the battlefield, they can even cost less, and so they can actually drop down on the mana curve as well, making it a deck that can come in fast and hit very hard, and this is in part due to the quality of the 2-drops here. You have 3 1s in the Leonins of the Lost Pride and 2 1s in the Sunlit Hoplites. Both of them attack very well. Yes, the Leonin of the Lost Pride is kind of weak on toughness, so it does have a tendency to die relatively easily, but it has an effect that kind of matters in Theros Beyond Death. It's particularly against Ashiok's deck, in that when they die, you can exile a card from a graveyard, which means that your opponent's escape cards are going to get nailed by that, and so that is actually a great hoser for escape decks in particular, or other decks that rely on the graveyard. So it's not exactly a waste to trade if your opponent has something like that in their graveyard, and that's going to cause them to think twice on whether or not they want to take the hit or they want to trade and then lose the card that's giving them value in the graveyard. The Sunlit Hoplite works a little differently in that it has first strike when it's attacking, and so it can just keep attacking And you have the capacity in this deck to surprise pump that first striker. And so if your opponent blocks, for example, you can cast the Undaunted Will, the Phalanx Tactics, or the Karametra's Blessing. All of them will cause your Sunlight Hoplite to grow in power and possibly be able to take out whatever that is blocking it. And so these are kind of the core of the deck right here, backed up by all of these tricks / the enchantments that also play as tricks there. And then this is also synergized with the Hero of the Winds, which has the ability to give all of your creatures +1/+0 when it itself is targeted as well. So that when you need the Sunlit Hoplite to get just 1 power, if you're attacking with Hero of the Winds and maybe some other creatures, you can use the Karametra's Blessing to power that up as well, getting your Sunlit Hoplite to basically get a free kill on your opponent's blocking creature because of the Hero of the Winds. So that all works quite well here, and the Idol of Inspiration even further helps that cause because it gives a +2/+0 to one of your creatures on your attack. And that makes your offense extremely strong and will put a lot of decks on the relatively equivalent level of power to Planeswalker decks on the back foot from early on, especially if you can put a couple of these cards onto the battlefield early and get some good trades, possibly trading your combat tricks and not your actual creatures for your opponent's creatures. And so that is what is really strong about this deck. The thing about this deck is that it doesn't have a lot of synergy. It's very, very simple, and the ways that it does try to have synergy isn't that great. Now, Hero of the Winds is one of those points of synergy that you build a board and then you can target Hero of the Winds with any one of these cards over here. There are 8 cards that you can target Hero of the Winds to give all of your creatures +1/+0. So that is a decent part of synergy right there, but it's not amazing. It's not like your deck is combat trick central and you only have 2 Hero of the Winds that's going to be applying this effect to your other cards. So it's just a minor part of this deck. You also have the Archon of the Falling Stars, which theoretically gets you back an enchantment from your graveyard to the battlefield when it dies, and it's already a chunky 4/4 flyer. But you only have so many enchantments that you can bring back. You have 3 Eidolons of Inspiration, Daxos Blessed by the Sun, and 3 Dreadful Apathies, as well as the Indomitable Wills. And that's not exactly a great selection. None of these enchantments are especially powerful, and so it is definitely downgrading your Archon of the Falling Stars to get one of those back, making it not quite ideal in this particular deck. And what's more, Karametra's Blessing cares if your creatures are either enchantment creatures, of which you only have 4, or enchanted, and you only have 3 enchantments that you can use to enchant your creatures. And then it'll give the creature indestructible, which is great, except for the fact that you don't have a lot of cards that will necessarily be able to use Karametra's Blessing to that effect. Plus, a lot of your weaker level creatures here, especially down here, only have 1 toughness, and so if you're not attacking, like if the Sunlight Hoplite is not attacking, or the Lena of the Lost Pride is attacking at all, the toughness bonus that you're getting from Karametra's Blessing will sometimes not be especially relevant, and will just cause you to 2-for-1 yourself, which is not that great of a thing either. On top of that, Taranika, a Crowan Veteran, while it's theoretically a strong card in that it turns any one of your weaker cards into a base power and toughness 4/4 with indestructible, Taranika herself does not get that ability, and if Taranika doesn't get that ability, then Taranika is very likely to die in combat while you get through with a 4/4 for 1 hit, which can make the difference, but it also means that most of the time somebody's going to be just letting the 4/4 through and trading with Taranika so that you lose Taranika on the next attack. Now you can improve this by like a combat trick or something, but Taranika is not a enchantment creature, and if she's enchanted, she's going to be even bigger of a target for your opponent to try to kill them, so that she doesn't keep smashing in with a 4/4 indestructible creature. And so all of this makes the synergies of the deck fairly weak, and while it's fun to have these combat tricks right here, especially the ones that stick around with Indomitable Wills, you can get 2-for-1 with Indomitable Will, which is not necessarily a good thing. And you only have 3 real removal spells in the Dreadful Apathies. These are nice that you can eventually exile that creature on your prerogative when you have the mana free to get more pesky creatures that still have an effect on the board out, and not even into your graveyard, but just fully gone. And that makes the Dreadful Apathy a decent removal spell, and Elspeth herself is quite strong. especially because she can get more bodies on the battlefield from your Sunlight Hoplites, as well as just powering your creatures overall. And getting that Sunlight Hoplite does make for some level of defense. But again, the whole deck doesn't sing together that well. It's not like it's very focused on any particular strategy, except for being aggressive. Fortunately, it does it well enough that as a Planeswalker deck, it mostly functions well. And one of the ways that it functions really well is that everything's white. You never have to worry about getting color screwed. You have 25 planes here, and if I were somebody trying to improve this deck a bit, I would take out the Archons of the Falling Stars and try to find a lot more 1-drops at the very bottom that you can play to speed up your deck a little bit more and then maybe cut a planes from it. But overall, I think as an aggressive deck, this deck actually works. If you like being aggressive, if you like turning your creatures sideways, and you like playing with combat tricks, then, you know, this deck can work for you, but it is a very basic deck. And there have been plenty of these aggressive decks in Planeswalker deck form. So whether or not this really highlights what makes Theros Beyond Death special or not, I don't know. I don't think that it does that good of a job because it doesn't really play very well with the themes. But if you just like turning your cards sideways and this deck is available to you, and you're primarily going to play against decks of a relatively equal power level, then this is one that you can pick up. And that is my experience with Elspeth from Theros Beyond Death. If you've had any experience with this Planeswalker deck, let us know in the comments below, especially if it is a different experience than what I had with this deck. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.